Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're looking at Polestar Lotus, the biggest loser, as US plans huge tariff cuts for Chinese-made EVs. The US government could quadruple the tariff placed on Chinese-made electric vehicles amidst the long-running trade war between the two countries. Wall Street Journal reports Biden administration will announce significant tariff increases this week, with the Chinese EVs being the hardest hit. According to the publication, they will be subject to a tariff increase from 25 to 100%, which doesn't include the existing 2.5% duty tax on all vehicles imported to the US. The reported tariff increase is even higher than the President Biden's main electoral rival, Donald Trump, who is understood to be pushing for a 60% tariff increase, but on all Chinese vehicles. In March, former President Trump vowed to impose a 100% tariff on vehicles made in Mexico for Chinese companies if he is re-elected later this year, which would affect BYD, which has recently expressed its desire to open a factory south of the border. At present, there are no Chinese brands selling their vehicles in the US, though the Polestar 2 and the Buick Envision are amongst a handful of vehicles built in China and are sold in the state. Lotus, also owned by Chinese giant Geely, the parent company of Polestar and Volvo. They're also planning to launch their Electra electric SUV in the US later this year, while the Amaya sedan is due there next year. In response to President Biden's plan, a Chinese spokesperson warned the tariff could increase further escalation trade tensions between the countries. China will take all necessary measures to defend its right and interests, the spokesperson told the Wall Street Journal. Last year, Biden backed the United Auto Workers Union, and it's an industrial action against Ford, General Motors, Stellantis, with the incumbent critic at the time of the Big Three. So Chinese EVs have also been the center of probe by the U.S. Commerce Department, which claims modern vehicles collected large amounts of sensitive data on their drivers and passengers, and regularly use their cameras and sensors to record detailed information on U.S. infrastructure. When the probe was launched in March, President Biden reportedly called it the unprecedented action to ensure that cars on U.S. roads from countries concerned like China do not undermine our national security. So that's a very interesting take based on what the president is saying. Some people will choose to believe that, some people won't. Some people will swear that there's other reasons. To be honest, there might be multiple reasons why they're taking these actions. Obviously, the US and China is competing against each other right now like we've never seen them before. And that's primarily because they're the main two big superpowers in the world in terms of military might, in terms of GDP, in terms of infrastructure, basically everything. So they're competing in every single space. The president also went on to say, and I quote, "Chinese policies could flood our market with its vehicles, posing risk to our national security. I'm not going to let that happen on my watch," end quote. So despite offering such a small number of models in the large US new car market, China becomes the largest vehicle exporter in 2023, dethroning Japan amidst a boost of import from Russia. Now, truth to be told, these sanctions, these, claims, they should be taken very serious. For now, it's uncertain what will eventually happen, but it doesn't put Polestar in a very good place. And I must say, after watching Polestar going public, after watching Polestar doing incredible things, building over 50,000 vehicles in 1 year, the stock from IPO price till now, the stock has absolutely crashed. I've never really been worried about the Polestar company for various different reasons, because I do like the leadership. I believe in the long-term plan that Polestar has in store. But this is perhaps one of the first time that I'm sort of in doubt, because when it comes to countries, well, they have more authority than Polestar and Geely and Volvo. So it no longer matters what Polestar wants, what Geely wants, what Volvo wants. It's now what the US wants to allow. And they're willing to make sure that tariff is high as necessary. I've always long predicted that Polestar, Volvo, Geely, they need new manufacturing facilities in the US and Europe. Now, one of the reasons is to avoid situations like this, because right now the law is mostly a tariff on Chinese-made vehicles. China should instead look to build vehicles in the US and Europe, just the same as what Tesla is doing, but instead in China. We all remember the historic moment when Tesla announced that they'll be building a factory in China, how welcome they were, and how it's been incredibly successful for Tesla being in China. It's been absolutely wonderful for the Tesla company. But you see, in order for Tesla to benefit, in order for other automakers to benefit in China, Tesla has to build a factory in China to receive the full benefits. Chinese companies like Geely should really consider the same, if not something similar. Volvo already makes vehicles in the US, and the Polestar 3, I believe some of it will be manufactured in the US in the Volvo factory. But we need more of this. We need more investment from Geely, Volvo, and Polestar in the manufacturing space, in the infrastructure phase. This will benefit them greatly. So new duties on EVs from companies like BYD, Geely, NIO, even NIO is being affected as well. They're set to quadruple in 2024 to 100% from 25% of the current costs. But the question will remain, will Biden EV tariff move make any difference for EVs sold in the United States? The White House sweeping a raise of new tariffs will raise duty on 18 billion in Chinese imports, from steel, semiconductors to medical products, but the focus on EVs and manufacturing stands out. The White House embarked billions via the Inflation Reduction Act and bipartisan infrastructure law to boost EV adoption and charging and to create an American manufacturing industrial complex to support EV production. So if anything, what I'm seeing long term is that America wants to do it themselves rather than other Chinese companies building vehicles elsewhere and having them being shipped over to the US easily. Now, this is important because I believe BYD, as they were saying, was going to open a manufacturing hub in Mexico. They probably still will. Just because they can't get access to the US that easily, or just because there's high tariff, doesn't mean that they can't still sell vehicles in South America, further North America, like Canada. So currently, only Buick, Lincoln, Lotus, Polestar, and Volvo ship vehicles made in China into the US. That's quite a list. I didn't even know that Lincoln, Buick were actually, some of these vehicles were made in China. I didn't always know. So that's actually quite impressive because I thought these companies were American companies. I do. I thought these companies were American companies. They probably are US companies, but they probably moved to China for better access to manufacturing. So of those cars, only Polestar imports a Chinese-made EV to the US. Lotus just started shipping its luxury EVs in extremely limited quantities. Polestar said it was evaluating Tuesday's announcement from the White House, noting that its upcoming Polestar 3 will begin production in South Carolina this summer in the Volvo factory. So if this is going to impact Polestar, it's going to be on vehicles mostly like the Polestar 2 and Polestar 4. Those are probably manufactured outside of the US. The solution is simple, and I mean this, to Volvo, to Geely, to Polestar. Build a factory in the US, just a big mega factory. These factories can accommodate manufacturing for all of Geely's and Volvo brands, including Volvo, Polestar, Geely, Lotus. You can manufacture multiple vehicles in the same factory from multiple different companies under the one company umbrella. I believe this should be something that Geely seriously considers because thinking long term, thinking more strategic, it would probably make more sense if the company were to build factories in the US and more factories in Europe, please. Because EVs are growing all across the world, they're probably going to need factories in South America and in Africa as well. Because there's one nice thing about it being in China. You know, in China, they don't have a shortage in workers. They don't have a shortage in the manufacturing and infrastructure to build these vehicles. They do not have a shortage. Everywhere else around the world, they have shortages here and there. You know, not all the time. Europe is actually pretty good for building vehicles. But outside of that, like South America and Africa, they do have shortage. Even in the US, there are still like some difficulties, which is why Tesla is seeking out opportunities in Mexico. Tesla is building a factory in Mexico. More and more companies are looking to build factories in Mexico. Why is this? Because the available workforce and the ability to pay these people as little as possible. Companies are doing, you know, they're looking to make as much profit as possible and to spend as little as possible. So you do have a lot of people reporting on this, but the information is relatively the same. But one thing that I will add, the Polestar 2 is built on the same CMA platform as Volvo XC40 and C40 crossover, which are produced in Ghent, Belgium. It's possible that the P2 production could be added in Ghent, but that wouldn't happen before sometime in 2025, which could leave Polestar with nothing to sell in the US until the new models arrive unless they already have several months of inventory here. The Polestar 2 starts at around $50,000, but the increased tariff would likely push the price beyond $80,000, making it uncompetitive in the market. Which would simply mean that, in order for Polestar to do better in the US market by building vehicles outside of the US, they would have to build more luxury vehicles that they can sell for higher premiums and so be less affected by these tariffs. Here's another thing. The Chinese battery tariff is increasing from 7.5% to 25%, which would add several $1,000s to the cost of EVs using these batteries. At this time, it's unknown where Polestar and Volvo are sourcing these batteries, so it's unclear if the Polestar 3 and Volvo EX90 will be impacted. What I do find interesting is that at the time, it is unknown where Volvo and Polestar are sourcing these batteries. Things like this should be more public knowledge, wouldn't you agree? After all, these are public companies. But listen, I'm going to end the video here. So we could be affected. This is the one thing where it's actually got me with uncertainty because there is no telling how this is going to turn out. But long term, Volvo, Geely, Polestar, you need factories, more factories in the US, more factories in Europe. Start there, then start thinking about South America and Africa. That's it for today. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to see more. Leave a like, leave a comment, and I'll see you in our next video. Peace.